Welcome to 365 Christian Men, where every day we aim to inspire and encourage with real-life stories about men. February 14th, Frank P. Lytle Jr. Although he lost his hearing when he was 1 year old, Frank was a follower of Jesus and a leader of men. So reads a line on Abilene Christian University's webpage for the Frank and Lois Lytle Family Endowed Scholarship, which Frank's son created out of a deep respect for his parents. Frank served as a church deacon and in many deaf ministries. He was always out in front, leading in deaf organizations throughout Michigan and Arizona. It seems that Frank always had the drive to see what needed to be done and to do it. Listen to this.
Success is for those who refuse to quit. 13-year-old Frank Lytle squirmed in his seat and glanced again toward the door. He and his buddies at Detroit Day School for the Deaf eagerly anticipated the arrival of Henry Ford. Finally, in strode the great car manufacturer. He wore a dark suit, sharp tie, and a pressed white shirt. Mr. Ford spoke, and Frank tried to read his lips. Had he understood? The interpreter signed, "If you graduate from this school, come down to the factory, and I'll give you a job." It was true. Mr. Ford had promised him a job. In 1934, a lot of people said the deaf were unemployable, but God had given him the ability to learn and to work hard. One day, he would take Ford's offer. 4 years later, Frank, now 17, stood in front of the world headquarters of Ford Motor Company. On his pants, he wiped sweaty palms. His mother nodded encouragement. They entered the employment office, and Frank's mother helped him communicate his desire for a job. The company hired Frank at a good wage as an apprentice journeyman in tool and die. As Frank left, he barely felt the floor beneath his feet. He finally had a man's job. Frank was happy working in the factory, but he wanted to become the white-collar office worker. Blue-collar workers endured all kinds of shifts, day and night, and Frank had a good reason to be successful at his job. One night, while attending his school's skating party, Frank greeted Lois, the prettiest girl he had ever seen. Skating with her on his arm, Frank felt he was living his dream. He was more motivated than ever to find a path to a white-collar job. Then he would marry Lois. After all, a family man needed better pay and hours. To go from blue-collar to white-collar work was always a leap, but it was unheard of for a man who was deaf. Still, Frank enrolled in classes to become a draftsman. The first day of class, Frank worked at the factory. Then he went to school and took a seat with a clear view of the teacher. But as the teacher wrote on the chalkboard, the man kept facing the wall when he talked. Frank couldn't read his lips. Frank copied everything on the board but didn't understand all of it. After class, he asked the teacher for an explanation, but the teacher didn't help. Frank's shoulders sagged, but he refused to quit. For 4 years, he worked his factory shift and sat in class, copied the board, and wondered what others had heard. Then Frank took the exam to certify as a draftsman. Frank failed. Frank's dream had been shattered, but determined, his mother marched him back to the drafting class. He enrolled for another year, and this time, the new teacher was more helpful. Once again, Frank took the exam. He passed and was promoted to draftsman. His first day, Frank strode into Ford's world headquarters in his dark suit, sharp tie, and pressed white shirt. Head high, but pulse sputtering like a poorly tuned engine, he sat at the long table, covered in rolls of wide, white paper. The boss handed Frank a note. It said, "Heard your story. Wonderful story. I will give you 2 weeks, and we will see if it works out." Frank's limbs went limp. After 5 years of sacrifice, constant struggle, and dogged perseverance, could the dream again be stripped away? The 2 weeks dragged. At the end of them, the boss gave Frank a thumbs up. The first deaf man to obtain a white-collar job at Ford, Frank designed and built engines for 42 and a half years. Before he retired, he managed a team of 26 people. Rick Lytle, Frank's son, said, Dad acted with strength given by God to overcome all the challenges of being fully deaf in a hearing world. Frank's success brought hope to the deaf community. He encouraged his friends to pursue career advancement, and several did. They created a standard of living that for the deaf of their time was unprecedented. Like us, Dad didn't know how God was working behind the scenes, said Rick, but Dad acted in simple faith, goodness, and hard work. God multiplied Frank's efforts and blessed many lives. The Bible says in Psalm 16, verse 8, "I have set the Lord always before me. Because he is at my right hand, I will not be shaken." How do you face overwhelming odds? Success is for those who refuse to quit.
Thank you for listening to today's story. Every day of the year, our hope is to inspire you with real-life stories of faithful men who have gone before us. Hebrews 12:1 says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us. Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." Join us tomorrow for another story at 365christianmen.com.